Hello there, lovely folks of YouTube. Ren here with Hades, of course, being outside. Anytime I'm outside, he has to join me. So I wanted to do a little book blurb again. This is not so much a review, because I'm not really diving really deep into these books that I'm going to talk about. But I wanted to talk about some book suggestions for people who are ready to move on from the beginner books in Green Witchcraft. So a lot of the times people get started in Green Witchcraft, they'll read things like Erin Murphy Hiscock's Green Witch or Paige Vanderbeck's Green Witchcraft, or even like the older folks might, be familiar with Anne Mora's Green Witchcraft books. Those sorts of books are a good introductory, even some of the stuff like Cunningham or, Amy Blackthorne's books, where you're, or even some of the books that I've mentioned, like Paul Beyerl, where you're diving more into the herbalism side, are good reads. But like once you've gotten through those books, you kind of go, okay, well, what next? Where do I go now? Like, how do I deepen this research? How do I deepen my understanding of the way that, plants and herbs work with us? So I wanted to talk about some books that you can use in order to help you on that path if you're looking to really dive deeper into a Green Witch practice. So I have a big chunky stack here. Lots of pretty wide variety of books. So let's start into it. I know, you're going to be a real pest, aren't you? Oh my goodness, you sure are. All right, so this first one that I have here, I'm going to say right now, I am not 100% sure how to pronounce the author's name. It's either Schulke or Schulk, Daniel Schulk. So this book right here, Daniel Schulk has several books out, one that's in progress that has been a work in progress. It was supposed to come out in like 2019, 2020, and it's still not available. He publishes his stuff through Three Hands Press, which is a small independent occult publisher. This book in particular, though, 13 Pathways of Occult Herbalism, it's a pretty... I hesitate to call it a light read. It's short but dense. This is a hefty amount of information in a very concise package. And what this book is talking about is basically different philosophical approaches to how we interact with herbs in our magical practice. So talking about, the 13 different pathways in which you can work with herbs. Pathway of tradition, the pathway of affinity, pathway of aversion, pathway of disappearance, like all these different ways in which we interact as a society, as humans, with the plants, and giving some information, kind of help you dive deeper into what your own practice is and give you a vocabulary for ways in which to deepen your practice. So I think it's really important book for that respect. In particular, there's the last section, the Green Intercessor. Oh my gosh, I'm tripping over my own tongue. The Green Intercessor, Tutelary Spirits and the Transmission of Plant Magic. Like, that's a fabulous section. So this is a really good book. This author is probably more famous for his book Beneficium, which I do not own. But yeah, he works really deeply with poison path work. Which kind of ties into our next book. Well, one of our books here. I may as well just go to that one next. This is actually a set of 3. These 3 books are all basically 3 parts of one giant compendium work. This is the Pharmaco series by Dale Pendell. So, Dale Pendell is not a magician. At the very least, he's not a magician in our sense of the word, is that, he's not a practitioner of the occult, but he is definitely informed by occult philosophies. And this is really, it's not a magical text, it's actually an ethnobotany text. Fabulous text. So this is like the book to have if you have any interest, even just a curiosity in poison path, meaning, using those entheogens. I think Dale Pendell may have actually been the person to coin the term entheogen. But yeah, I mean, this is this book, I can't even, it's a massive undertaking to read these books, but it is so goddamn fascinating and so entertaining. Mainly because, like, not only does he give a whole bunch of history behind all of these psychotropic substances and how they were used in their respective cultures, but he gives like his own personal experience with what happened when he took them, which is like, I mean, who even does that? This is fucking insane. And some of it is like interspersed with some of the poetry that he wrote while under the influence of these drugs. It's like, it's a fabulous mind trip. And even if you don't have any interest in working the poison path or ingesting those plants yourself, like me, this is still just an absolutely fabulous, fabulous series of books. And I highly recommend it if you want to know more about how we have used mind-altering substances in history. So, great series of books. All right, this next book here, this is a really interesting one because, again, this is not a magical text. This isn't even really an herbal text per se. But this is one that every person that I've ever talked to who is interested in a green path, who has read this book, has basically said the same thing that I've said, which is this is a must-read book. If you want to have any kind of relationship with plants in the natural world, this is a book that will aid you in that process. It's called Braiding Sweetgrass. It's by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Robin Wall Kimmerer is a trained botanist, so I think she either has a master's or a doctorate in botany, but she's also a Anishinaabe, member of the Potawatomi Nation, so she's also, a native, a member of the native tribes, and she brings a lot of their mythology and perspective and how they interact with the natural world into and sort of meshes it together with the scientific understanding of plants. And it is just, oh my God, it is like, it nearly brought me to tears at a few places. Just her perspective is so amazing. And I mean, I cannot speak highly enough of this book. Highly recommend it. It's really a good foundation for helping you develop a relationship with the earth and with the plants with whom we share the earth. And it's it's just mind-blowing and it's moving and I love it so much. All right, I have one more book, and I'll be honest, when I first thought of making this video, I wasn't even going to include this book. I changed my mind and I decided to include it reluctantly, but I want to do it with a big freaking caveat. So this is a book, Witchcraft Medicine. This is written by 3 authors who, the original work was written in German. So it has a very Eurocentric approach to it, very based in, European witchcraft beliefs. Claudia Müller-Eberling, Christian Rach, and Wolf-Dieter Storl are the authors of this book. So this is a really fascinating perspective on the intersections between witchcraft and folk healing practices. However, here's the issue I have with this book, is that it's written in the same method that you would see like a historical or, researched text would be. But a lot of the citations that they give for their claims, like, saying like, oh, well, this is proven by blah, 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 and they give like, citations, and a lot of those citations are actually citations of previous works that the same authors had written, which is like, ooh, that's always like super sus, like highly suspect. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't know, it just doesn't sit right with me. They also will say a lot of things where it's like, they'll make a lot of things that are like, sometimes they'll state something like an assertion as if it's just fact when they don't actually have anything to back it up. And they'll be like, well, obviously it means this. And I'll be like, obviously to you, but it's not obvious to me. Like, so huge chunk of salt needed with this book. But there can be spiritual truths found in places that even historical truths may not necessarily be. So if you look at it in that respect, like, don't take it as a historical, researched, scientifically agreed on, and I mean scientifically as in like, like history sciences, the soft sciences, social science way of like saying like there's a consensus. There's no consensus in this book, but there's a lot of really fascinating ideas, and I think that it's worth it for that. Just don't take it as truth. So yeah, that's my books. So there's probably more out there. I'm sure there's a lot more really fascinating books, but I haven't actually read them. So if you have some suggestions for me on books that you think that would also fit into this category, I would love to hear them, because I'm just one person. I can't read all the books. I have actually gotten some really good input from previous, other YouTube viewers have suggested books that I've then looked into and been like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Corinne Boyer's books is a great example of that. So yeah, I welcome your suggestions as well. If there's anything that you would add to this list, please post in the comments below. And of course, yeah, I always welcome the discourse. So that's all I have for you today. I hope this video finds you well, and I will see you again soon.